All right. So feet together, toes together. Let's take a bow. So again, we'll do a short warm-up so that we can jump into our detailed view of the 13 postures. So, right. So, feet shoulder width apart, knees bent, shoulders relaxed. Spine nice and vertical. Just let everything flow into your feet, from the crown of your head through the spine into your feet. Breath is in the belly. And bend forward. Straighten the legs. Roll down. Just hang out. Shoulders relaxed, neck relaxed. And back up. And hands on kidneys, lean back. And back to center. Knees bent. And again, straighten the legs. Roll down. Come back up. Hands on kidneys, lean back. And back to center. Bend the knees, tuck in the hips. Let the blood settle back in. And again. Straighten the legs. Roll down. Come back up. Hands on kidneys, lean back. And back to center. Bending the knees. One more time, this time going side to side. So straighten the legs, same as before. Roll down at the bottom of the stretch. Just gently swing from foot to foot. And back to center. And roll back up. Unrolling the spine. Hands on kidneys, lean back. And back to center. So knees bent, hips tucked. Nice and vertical. Now carry the tiger. Stretch up. Drop the arms to shoulder height. Open the chest, rotate the shoulders. Squat. And turn the hands over. Settle down. Knees bent, hips tucked. And again. And again. Let's do one more. Hold. Basic posture. Knees are bent, hips are tucked, shoulders relaxed. Spine is nice and long. Breath in the belly. Go and drop. Now play the pipa. So remember, shift to the left, turn to the right. And sweep down, forehead to the knee, and then sweep up. And bring the toes to the front, shift, turn, and exhale. One more set. Back to center. Now horse stance. So white stance. Squat. And then push the knees apart so you get a nice stretch in the inner thighs. And squat. Heels on the ground. And shift. Then shift. Toes up. And shift. Other side. And back to center. And walk the feet in. Whew. All right, so Let's jump in to where we ended last time, which was, well, we were in the middle of the end of the second section. So, well, the middle of the end. We had looked at twisted joint, elbow, shoulder strike. All right. So we had stopped at shoulder strike, and again, just to review, shoulder strike is a rise in the leg, and then a tilt in the body for that shoulder strike. So it's not a shift forward, it's a rising up, bracing yourself on the toes, and then tilting at the waist, and that's the strike, right? So it's transferring that upwards energy and using the waist to then make it horizontal, or at least actually downwards, right? Arm is open, which means that there's a curve in the arm. Here it's the curve, you mostly want it so that there's room underneath the armpit, right? Because otherwise it's very easy to do shoulder strike here with the arm compressed against the body, but you don't want that because you want flow into the arm. So remember to have that rounded arm as you do this. The rounded arm connects the arm and the shoulder to the back. So first of all, you should feel that the shoulder itself is being supported by the back, right? Because you're hitting something. So you don't want the shoulder to just be just collapsed. You want to feel that the whole back muscles are engaged, supporting the shoulder. But also it means that you have that curve in the arm and you have space under the armpit. So you're at no point are you compressing, right, the flow of both blood and energy under your armpit. So you extend round the back, round the shoulder, and should feel like an expansion in the extend round the back, round the shoulder, and should feel like an expansion in the shoulder itself. So it's both for the application reason, right? A nice solid supported shoulder, but also when you're doing the form, nice and slow. Oh, when you're here, this position, there's power, but there's also openness in the body, right? So here the roundedness is there to make sure that energy is flowing all the way down to the arm. And the hand is essentially cupping the shoulder, right? So you're basically protecting your face, but you should feel like this position here with shoulder strike is not a closed position. It's a seated, kind of grounded position, but it's not closed, it's not short and compact, it's actually open. So even at the softest, you should really feel that energy just coming in and dropping through the arms, right? To that shoulder strike. So now, after shoulder strike, so after we've done the second section to all four corners, right? So, the third section, to remember where we are. So we're pointing toward the diagonals, and after shoulder strike, we're going to sit back and rise up to here. That's central equilibrium, right? And so the important part here is that I was in shoulder strike, and so I sit down onto that rear leg. So I was rising up on the rear leg, I'm now going to sit down on that rear leg. The hand that was against the shoulder essentially stays in the same place in space, right? So if I was here and I sit back, my hand stays in the same place in space. So it's not that you're pushing the arm out, it's that it stays in its place while the rest of the body sits back. That arm that was nice and rounded before to make space, as you sit down, see how now it creates essentially the arm that's going to sweep up. So it's like you're getting ready for ward off. All right, so you go very naturally from this position to this position. All you're doing is you're squaring your hips forward. So your hips are going to be in the same direction as your front foot. So then when you shift the weight onto that front foot, that arm sweeps up. All right? So you were here, you turn, shift forward, and the hand sweeps up. And the hand goes all the way up until it's over your own head. So this is where you want to think of central equilibrium slightly differently than all the moves before, because there's an argument that goes that central equilibrium is still a move, that there's an application, that this is like, oh, and then you're sweeping, you're ward off, and then yes. Differently here, this idea that you've just done shoulder strike and then you sit back and you're immediately in ward off. This idea that you've hit somebody with a shoulder and then the first thing you do is you're here to ward off. Technically, if we follow the diagonals, as I shift forward, the left hand in this case is the active hand, so which means that this would not be a ward off here with the arm going up. What would be happening is that this would be a yank and pulling somebody to the side. It's right because I'm here, sit down, this leg is full, this arm is full, but the minute I shift forward, this hand is full. So this rising up is not a ward off at all, because this is the empty hand. I think what is more important is to think of central equilibrium in connection to what central equilibrium itself represents, which is the vertical, the center line, right? The energetic pathway that connects heaven and earth. And in this particular case, central equilibrium is a point where we were going forward, and now we're going to start going backwards. So central equilibrium, in a way, is here, we come to a stop. And this is where it's important that as you do it, the hand is not over here, but over here, on top of your own head. And what you should think of is that the palm, crown of the head, the body, and the foot, right, the well point that's in your foot, are all in line. And notice that here, if I'm on my right foot and my right hand is up, which sounds like it should violate the rules that we have. You'd think that we'd be here, right leg full, left arm full, but instead we're here. So what we're doing is we're actually activating the entire side. And that's why I'm saying that you should think of central equilibrium slightly differently. It's not an application. It's a moment where after we've done all of this, now we come back, we activate, in this case, the right side. We find that vertical, we come back to the center, all right? So this is an energetic position. And then from there, we step back and we go back into the applications. So there, you can look at central equilibrium as another application, but I think that would be missing the point of what it does energetically, the purpose of it energetically. And the purpose is to realign, to remind ourselves we've done all of this, right? We're like, and then it's like, no, remember, vertical line, connecting head and feet to heaven and earth. Realign yourself, then come back for the next move, right? I think it's more productive to think of it in that way, so that you don't get lost doing 13 postures just like as this, like moving the body through space, but it's also here, it's reconnecting the body to heaven and earth, right? So you can just standing here, you can feel it. The whole right side of the body is activated. And then we're going to do on the left side when we do the other side. So each side is being activated, right, fully. You can feel it. Okay? So that's central equilibrium. So the two important points is here, the sitting back and turning the waist. Right? And that's what puts you in the, and notice my hands barely have to move. Boom, I'm turning my waist. That's what puts me in the correct position. And then all I have to do is shift forward, cross the hands, rise up, and bring my hand over my head. My arm can be relaxed. I bring the toes in so that I can go fully onto that front leg, and I'm rising up onto that front leg. All right? So that's central equilibrium. It's a moment of breath, a chance to recenter yourself. It's important when you think that the third section of the 13 postures is all 8 moves plus central equilibrium, right? We have our 8 basic moves, We've seen 4 of them already. We're about to see the next 4. So there's 4 basic moves on either side of central equilibrium. And that's the pattern, that's the mental map that we should have in our heads. 4 moves on either side, central equilibrium. It's the pivot. It's that literally that pivot that connects heaven and earth that we are dancing around with our 8 energies, which is what the Bagua is. 8 energies and then the central pillar. Right? So
first section we do 4, second section we do another 4, and then the third one.
Yeah. So what's cool is that the 13 postures itself has within it elements of of philosophy. Like literally here we're mapping out the Bagua. We're mapping out, actually what we're doing is we're mapping out the Loshu map. Right? So there's all these old Taoist symbols that actually predate the yin and yang. They don't predate they predate the Tai Chi symbol itself, right? The 2 swirls, black and white. So in the 13 postures, you're actually mapping out some of these basic principles of Taoism and of Tai Chi. So that's what's cool. That's what for me, central equilibrium is not an application. It's a pivot point. It's a return to center. Because around it are the 8 moves. So let's continue and let's see the next 4 moves. Because remember, the first 4 moves that we saw, which is pluck, twist the joint, elbow strike, shoulder strike. Those 4 moves are kind of the minor moves. They're variations on the 4 main moves. On our Bagua, they would be in the corners, in the diagonals. Right? Because remember, each of those 4 is a variation on one of the main moves, which we're about to see. Remember? So it's actually fairly simple. The second half is fairly simple. So from central equilibrium, we simply step back and sit.
Are we facing out back at the front?
So if we started the form this way, right, we would go here to here to here to here. So that's the first 4 segments of the first section. And then we turn to here, to here, to here, to here. That's the second section, the 4 segment of the second section. And then we would turn to the rear diagonal this way. So we would be doing drag down, twist the joint, elbow, shoulder, central equilibrium. And now we're going back this way. All right? So technically we're facing that way, the rear diagonal. If we started here, the third section, so the first quarter of the third section is to that rear diagonal. All right? So if we start here, we turn that way. Central is...
So in terms of directions, it's right, left, front,
Yeah.
back, right, left, front, back,
Diagonal.
right, corner, left, corner,
Yeah.
right, corner, left.
Exactly. So, which is why all the transitions are basically the same. There's only once that we don't do that repetitive pattern. So like you said, if we start here, it's 90 degrees, so to the right, to the left, 180, 90 degrees, 180. 90 degrees, 180, 90 degrees, 180. Here we do 135 to the diagonal, but then we do 180, 90, 180, then 135 back to front. So it's exactly the same. Each section is the same. It's always the same thing. Like you're saying, right, then left, right, then left. 90 degrees, 180. 90 degrees, 180. That pattern is repeated throughout. It's always going to be that. Right? There's only one place where instead of doing a 180, you do a 135 to the diagonal. But then you're back to... That's why when doing this, you want to remember that the fact that you're doing a square, you're standing on a square, and there's 8 directions, right? Forward, back, right, left, and then the diagonals of that square. And that's it. You're just mapping out those 8 directions. So in this particular case, we're along that back diagonal. So we've done shoulder strike, rise up, and then step back into ward off. And so all we're doing here is stepping back onto that left foot, sitting down and dropping into ward off. The left arm in this case is just relaxed, hanging by the side. We're doing tiger's mouth around the thigh, right? But nice and relaxed. It's not tight, it's relaxed, but it's just resting in the tiger's mouth by the thigh. And all we've done is this, boom, ward off basically at heart level, right? Nice and rounded, back is rounded. So we were here, we step back onto the left foot, sit down as we shift, picking up the toe, right? So we're picking up the toe, the heel of the right foot, and just sitting down, ward off. Right. Very simple. It's literally, make it as simple as you can. Just step back and sit. Knees bent, hips are tucked. And then we're going to take a big circular step, big round step, which takes us into rollback. Right? So we go from ward off, and then as my foot circles, my arm comes up, and then I shift the weight and rise up. Roll back. All right, so I was here. Boom. And again, like we saw for play the pipa, there's that circular motion of the hand. So the arm starts with the palm down, and then as it swings forward, palm is up. From here, because your arm was down, so swing and up. And what you want, so the thing about rollback, it's not over here or over here. Rollback is specifically, power comes towards you, punch comes to your nose, and you're gonna turn and you're gonna deflect it. So you need to go only just past your own center, but no more. If you go too far, you're now throwing yourself sideways. So rollback is just right here, right? The deflection is right here, right there. Boom. Boom. Right? Just enough for a punch to be deflected, just enough to miss. All right, so there's that line of intent that I mentioned before. All right, so that line of intent is here. We do ward off from it, and then we do roll back. All right.
So a little more, the arms a little more towards the front.
Yeah.
Body, waist turn is a little bit sideways.
So before we've seen in play the pipa a full turn to the diagonal, right? But that's not what we want, because in play the pipa, that turn to the diagonal was a way of pulling, right? Of really sending that energy down and through. Here with ward off, it's just a deflection. We're not doing anything. We're not catching an arm. We're just deflecting. Power comes here and just deflected just enough that it goes and pass through. So that's why it's just rise up and turn. As small and gentle as you can make it. Rise up and turn. It's not, there's nothing fancy. We're not pulling on anything. Just there, right? So it's ward off, roll back, rising up. And then we're going to do another step back and sit down. Yeah, so the arms are at a nice angle. So for ward off, roll back. Notice that we're always going to have this idea of a curve as being kind of our main architecture for the arms at all times, right? So the arm that's here and right, nice and rounded here in ward off, in a shoulder strike, is the same arm that's here in ward off, nice and rounded, connected to the back, is the same arm that's here, rounded, ward off, roll back. And here that arm has the same curve, it's just that it's pointed up, palm facing us, as opposed to here or here. But it has the same architecture. It always has that same curve. So the armpit is always open. The shoulder is always extended, right? So we're always going to have that same curve. And so you can always double check. Whenever you're doing the form, if you're not in that shape, it's because there's a reason, right? Well, what should be deforming these basic curves is intent. You've now decided that I'm gonna, instead of being here, I'm gonna be here or here, whatever it is. But otherwise, it's this rounded back, curved elbow, and so you're creating this arc. Right? That's the arc that it automatically comes in, and that's your defensive. Right?
It feels like if you were going to step forward and backhand somebody, just as you start that, you get that.
Yep.
That's the.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If you, like you were saying, so if you were to backhand somebody, this is the curve that you would have right before you have that final extension that turns into a strike. But it's that whole opening, so the whole arm is like a whip. Like, it's nice and relaxed. So that curve is there not just because it creates a structure, but also because it allows you to relax not just the shoulder, but also the elbow and the wrist. It's nice and long. Right? You feel like you can really just kind of work on lengthening that shoulder joint, lengthening that elbow, lengthen the wrist all the way down to the fingertips, and your arm is as long and as relaxed as possible. There's space under the armpit. There's space in the shoulder joint, in the elbow, in the wrist, in the hand. It's a long, kind of relaxed arm. But here, even keeping that length and that relaxation, that shape, right, has structure, has power behind it because it's connected to the shoulder and to the back. So I don't need to have muscular tension in my arm in order to have strength here, because the structure itself is stable, right? So you want to go for the kind of nice and loose and relaxed shoulders and lengthen those arms, and it's here, and the arms just float up. Arms just float up.
Angle the arms.
Yep.
You can feel the connection across.
Yeah, exactly. So all of this comes from the back. The arms themselves, if you extend that shoulder, it allows the shoulder to be connected to the muscles in the back. So it's almost like your arm starts at your spine. That's the feeling you should have. The arm doesn't move from the shoulder. The arm moves from the spine. It's that connection to the spine, right, that connects through the shoulder, through the elbow, through the wrist, into the hand. So that's that shape that we're having. It's not rounding the shoulder. It's connecting the shoulder to the spine. Now the arm, my hand, is actually connected to the spine itself, and the spine to the hips through the foot to the ground. So my hand is connected to the ground that way. So, where were we? Oh yes, shoulder. So, ward off, roll back. Now the next thing. So we're going to take a big step back, cross the hand just like the beginning, drop the elbows, little step, and push. All right, so this is just like the end of the first section of the 13 postures. It was before we did seal it closed here. Boom, same exact thing, except that we're here. We take a big circular step, sit back, release so we're pivoting the foot on the ball of the toes, So pivoting the foot on the toes, and then bring the hands in at the horizontal, drop the elbows vertical, and then rise up and push. And the one thing is here, I can move the feet. So if I'm here and I take a big step, I sit back, I release the foot. But here it's not really a step. I'm going from being on my toes to my heel. So then I can rise up, roll the foot from heel to toes and push. And again, the push is rising up, bracing myself with the front foot, and then transforming that upwards energy into horizontal energy through the shoulders. So it's not leaning forward, it's rising up and pushing. Right? And you never extend so much that you can't still tuck in your hips. So I'm not like going up here, I'm going here. Hips are still tucked. There's still a slight bend in that rear leg. Push. And then I simply shift the weight forward, turn the wrist, and press. And now here again, you want to think of the diagonals going through the body, because if you're here, if you've pushed and you shift the weight onto your front foot, then you know that your left hand is the one that's striking. So if you always think, okay, which leg am I? It's going to be the opposite arm that's going to be active because we want this diagonal across the body. So in press, you're striking with the wrist. So if I'm sitting on my right leg, my left wrist is out, my right hand is supporting my left wrist. All right? So that's why you can always tell which one. Because notice this is different from the first time we did press. Press at the beginning we did here, where my weight was on the rear. So I had the same hand was in front as my front foot. But here we're doing this, the opposite. So we're going from here to here, here to here. You see how basically all I'm doing is I'm preserving the diagonal.
How are you placing your hands? Is it
so
into hollow, or is
yeah,
it really down on the wrist?
Basically you want to match pinky to thumb, right? Because press is a strike with the right. That's why we turn the hand so that you create like a sharp wedge with the wrist, and you're going to hit with that wrist. So you want to support the wrist. So you're going to put your hand so that your pinky and your thumb touch, kind of match. And so the palm is kind of there's actually a space between your palm and the angle of the wrist, right? So there's a slight like
sit in each other.
Yeah.
Interlock.
They're interlocked. You can make it nice and soft, but basically the backhand is supporting the wrist because that's the point of impact. So that's where you want your palm to be right behind the fold of the wrist. So usually it's just pinky over thumb. But you don't have to line up the fingers. They can just be like this. But that's kind of what you want. Yeah, exactly. As long as your hand is supporting the wrist. Okay. So this is the test. After central equilibrium, we did ward off, roll back, push, and press. So those are the 4 main moves or main energies that we have. Pang Lu Anji, right? So Pang Lu Anji is literally the name of one of the push hands exercise, right? Because it's literally going Pang Lu Anji. Which is exactly what we're doing here. Pang Lu Anji. 4 main moves, all right? The 4 other moves that we saw at the beginning are variations on those 4 main moves, with central equilibrium in the middle, separating them. That's why I'm saying that central equilibrium is not an application, because it doesn't fit in our schema. It doesn't fit in our pattern, right? But it does fit in our Bagua. Because the 4 main moves that we just saw, Pang, ward off, Lu, roll back, An, push, Ji, press, or the cardinal direction in the Bagua, and pluck, elbow strike, shoulder strike, and twist the joint are the diagonals in the Bagua. Okay, that's how they match. That's how they fit in our system. Central equilibrium is returned to the center, right? It splits them. So we're here, right? Press, and then we just turn, and then do it again on the other side. Twist the joint, elbow, shoulder, up, right? Roll back, push, press. Then we do it again over there, and then we do it again facing the rear, and then right?
Turn here. Just sit back, drop, turn this palm down.
Yeah, exactly. So next class, Next class we'll look specifically at all the transitions because they're pretty important. So it's worth spending time just working on the transitions. But essentially, as a general rule, it's as simple as you can make it, right? So if I'm here and I want to go behind me, I'm just going to kind of relax my hands, step back, shift the weight so now my weight is on the rear leg, And my hands and my front foot are going to travel until my foot is now in the correct position. So in this case, pointing clear, and then shift, and then now I finish the move, right? So the important part is that shifting of the weight 100% to the rear foot, then the front foot, right? So the transition is a transition that actually is 100%. During most of our moves, right, all of this, we're usually 70-30 in terms of weight distribution, 70%, 30%. For the transition, you have to be 100%, because the only way that you can be here and bring your toes safely so that they point in a new direction is if you're 100% on the other one and there's no weight on this leg. So you turn. So if my hands are here, I'm going to turn, bring the toes in, right? So it's less about the hands, it's more about the foot, right? I'm bringing the foot. The hands are simply staying in front of my shoulders. That's all I'm doing. Turn, and now I shift. So now that all my weight is here, now the other leg can just move to wherever it needs to be.
Yeah, once I see where the hands go, the feet are pretty easy because that's the same for every system.
Yeah. So, but I would encourage you to start thinking of the feet first and then the hands. Because, so in this case here, I step back, shift, and all I'm doing is I'm releasing the hands, letting the hands just float in space in front of my shoulders, right? And then I bring my toes in, so I'm turning the hips. The hands are simply following my movement, and then from here I shift, and now I drop into drag down. So the hands don't really do anything until the second half, where, right, I'm here. Now that I shift, now I do drag down. So now the leading hand is the edge, and then my other hand is now going to stop here. All right, palm to the side. All right, but that only happens for the second half of the transition. That's why thinking about the feet first is more important. It's the feet that are turning, shift, and now I can do whatever I want. It's always that shifting, turning, right? Because the turning of the foot turns the waist, which turns the body. So if I'm here, turn. So the whole body is turning just because I'm pivoting on that heel, pointing my toes in the correct position, right? And that will automatically put you in the correct position, and the hands can just follow.
That's pretty ingrained.
So it's not the hands moving through space. It's the toes are pointing in different directions.
Well, like this, they just travel along.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. If you're here, boom, and now I'm pointing in the right direction. So my hands just have to do a minimal amount of changes because they're essentially pointing in front of my shoulders. They're just moving with my hips and my shoulders. Boom. Everything else is actually happening from my toes. So movement starts with the feet. It's not the hands moving through space, it's the feet moving, and because your feet are moving and they're guided by the waist is the commander, right? That's in the Tai Chi classics. This is a good example of that. Here, your foot is an extension of the hips. You're turning the hips in, so hip and foot point in the same direction. Shift, now you turn. Hip and foot point in the same direction. And because you're turning the hips, the arms move through space, right? So your arms in relationship to your body don't have to do anything. And so that's why it's really easy then to just add this. Right? Then you just go, oh. All your arms are doing is this. They literally go from here to here. That's it. So there's really almost no movement in the arms. It looks like you're doing a lot, but it's because you're moving your body. Your feet are moving, your waist is turning, right? It's that connection, toes, knees, hips. And it's important to think this way because, right, there's Tai Chi knee, which is considered a complaint among lots of Tai Chi practitioners where you start hurting your knees. because you're not thinking about that connection between the foot, the knee, and the hip. My foot should always be in line with my knee, and it's guided by the fact that it's connected to my hip. So if I'm turning, at no point am I putting sideways pressure on my knee, because I'm turning the leg that has no weight on it. The leg that has weight doesn't move. So my foot, knee, and hip are in line. I turn, and then I shift. So now I'm going to turn my waist so that it's now in line with my foot, knee, that is full. Right? So at no point is there sideways pressure on the knee. And that's why if you do it correctly, you should not have Tai Chi knee. You should not have any kind of pain in the knee, because the knee should never be under sideways pressure. If it is, it's because you either have weight on it, right, or you're not bringing the toes correctly with it. You're not transferring the weight correctly. You're letting.
I think that comes from that other form, because when they do 70-30 stances and they go to turn, they don't turn 100% shifted all the time.
Correct. So yeah, that's why. Yeah, exactly. The public style violates this rule, and I think that's why a lot of people who practice the public style of the Yang style are the ones who are complaining of knee problems, because exactly that. If your feet are locked, and you try to turn, the only way you can turn is in the knees, because you're not fully transferring the weight onto one foot so that you can be in alignment.
You never get any form when you're doing this form.
Yeah.
Empty.
Yeah. Again, in the Michuan style, you should never have sideways pressure on the knee. Knee, foot, and hip should always be in line. Right. The only time you have a shift or a difference is when that leg is empty, so there's no pressure on it. So that's when you can move your foot, turn it in any different direction, but there's no pressure on the knee because there's no weight on the leg. So that's crucial. That's going to preserve your knee, and that's why I keep saying the knee, the feet move first. It's not the hand moving through space; it's the feet. You're going to hurt yourself when you think of hands, and then you go like this, and your hands move first, and you leave your feet behind, and now suddenly your knees are torquing. Right? It really starts with the feet turn. Your focus, your mind is on the feet and the knees and hips. That connection right there, and then everything else follows. All right. So let's. So next time, so we've kind of seen everything of the 13 postures, right? But next time, we'll look at the transitions specifically, right? So each transition in each segment, we'll look at them specifically because it's actually pretty important that they're done correctly, like we just discussed. And it also helps to kind of cement the 13 postures itself in your own body and in space, right? It's just going from transition to transition, turning, and really getting in that sense of space and directions. So next time we'll look at this transition specifically. So let's do Celestial Tiger to close this off, right? And so Celestial Tiger, we will, so feet parallel, knees bent, hips slightly tucked, shoulders relaxed. Bring the breath back into the belly. And you raise the arms. Ho. Palms down, connected to the earth. Ho. Palms up, connecting to the heavens. Ho. Pinkies pointing out. Ho. Circling the arms. Ho. Pointing up. Ho. Dropping the arms, chest open to the heavens. Ho. Scooping by the kidneys. Squat. Then when the hands cross the heart, exhale, bring the hands over the head. Drop the hands. When they cross the heart, exhale, turning the hands. And again. Once more. Fold the hands on the belly. Bring your feet together. So the crown of the head and feet are connected through the spine, through the vertical. Heaven and earth are connected through your body. And let's take a bow. All right, so hiddenTaichi.com for more and for classes. Ciao. All right. Any questions?